Hello guys, Hitchel here, coming to you with another World of Warships Blitz video. In today's video, we will be taking a look at 6 common mistakes made by players, including myself, when starting out with CVs and how to avoid them. I have decided to make this video today as from my knowledge or what I've noticed when I started playing, there aren't that many, and I'm not saying there's no guides, I'm just saying there aren't that many guides out there on how to play CVs. So I've decided to make this video that I hope you guys will find helpful, as it will reduce your frustration if you apply this successfully to your game. I also wanted to point out that less than 15% of you guys viewing my videos are subscribed to the channel, so if the button is still red, please give it a click to show your support, it will be greatly appreciated. I also want to use this opportunity to thank my fleet mates in ODIN Ragnar's Raiders for working so hard on the fleet challenge and completing it, so thank you to you guys. And by the way, ODIN is also recruiting, so you guys, if you are in the Asian server, please don't forget to apply if you are interested in joining. With all of that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. The first thing which many players are not aware of, including myself when I started playing CVs, is not using the recall button to make torpedo planes circle and drop their torpedoes faster. Basically, if you are unaware what the recall button is, which I was unaware when I started, it's basically that button when you are viewing, let's say, because you have to be viewing from top down, the view that you can control your planes. Then, as you can see at the bottom right corner of the screen, there's a big button which is the one used for firing or selecting the drop point. Beside that button, there's a tiny picture of another button with a plane and an arrow. That is the recall button, and pressing that makes the planes return to your carrier. This tip, I basically use it, I mention it because many players who don't use it, including myself when I started playing, let's say the torpedo planes are going to drop and suddenly you decide to re-aim torpedoes. This will result in the planes circling very slowly, which will ultimately give the enemy more time to dodge and shoot down your planes. So if, let's say Shokaku, you have 4 planes per squadron, by the time, let's say even if you somehow manage to drop, you will have like 1 or 2 torpedoes left as the planes have been shot down. So basically how this works is, let's say this is the first original aiming point and suddenly you want to change, you first hit the recall button, then set the new aiming area or where you want to aim the torp set, and then press the button that will be for firing the guns on the battleship. This will make your planes turn around more sharply and faster, thus giving you more chance to land your torpedoes. When you master the use of the recall button and aiming your torpedoes, especially if you are using Japanese carriers, this effect can be really strong, as you have definitely seen a Hakuryu delete something like some destroyer, like something like Harugumo instantly when this is used correctly. So basically, remember to use your recall button, practice this, get good at it, and you will definitely see a lot more damage. At number 2 is not using your planes to spot for enemies for your team and yourself. I want to give a huge thank you for my buddy Franz from TF16 for pointing this out to me when I made this mistake. Spotting basically is sending your planes, usually fighters and bombers for the Japanese ones, or let's say both also can be applied, but usually the first choice are fighters, then bombers, and torpedo bombers are usually not used for spotting, though they can be used in certain situations if it's a special situation. So basically, when you fly a plane near enough to an enemy ship, the ship will be instantly detected unless it's in a smoke, but if it's in a smoke, you probably can see the smoke from your aerial view, so you will know that it's a ship there, and your team and yourself can take action against that ship immediately, which makes it harder for the enemy to flank. One mistake I made when I started was I really used the planes for literally their intended purposes. Torpedo bombers for dropping torpedoes on enemy ships, dive bombers for dropping bombs, and fighters for shooting down enemy planes. That's it, that's what I did when I started playing. This would work unless some enemy cruiser or DD decided to flank around the map. So there were a few embarrassing situations where I was in Shokaku and I was playing, and suddenly a Tashkent would appear out of nowhere, drop torpedoes, and I would be killed instantly. And this is definitely frustrating. So yeah guys, don't forget to spot, it will help you and help your team, as you guys can do something about that ship quicker and it will help you predict your enemy's movements and strategies better. The third mistake which many players, including myself, have made is not preventing your fighters from being baited by the enemy. I want to thank my buddy Yuva from TF16 for teaching me how to control the fighters and bait the enemy fighters, and I'm going to be sharing it with you guys so you guys can do the same as well. Basically, what happens when your fighters are just fixed in one spot, like let's say you fix a waypoint right there and you just leave them for the match, the enemy CV can easily bait them, which means the kill of your fighters. This will result in you having one less squadron for spotting for some time, and you also can provide friendly AA fire for your team, which means your team takes more damage. Instead, what you should be doing is, let's say when there's no enemy planes to shoot at, your fighters should literally be going places, so you just place waypoints here and there to make them move about to ensure it's harder to bait, instead of just fixing them in one location. You can also bait the enemy fighters if, let's say, you see them fixed in one point. You set a waypoint for your fighters, as you guys can see in the video that I'm showing on the screen right now, or the video overall is a replays. You can set your waypoint way behind the fighters, so once your fighters go close and the moment you see the enemy fighters lock on and start following you, you instantly hit the recall button so your fighters start going back to you. And at this point, I also want to say it's better not to recall them back to your ship and fight them over your ship. It's better to pull them to some friendly ship by setting a waypoint so your fighter goes to the friendly ship, preferably a ship with strong anti-aircraft guns like the US Navy ships, and when the enemy fighters passes over that ship, fix the waypoint on your fighters so they don't fight over the ship. The reason you don't want them to fight over your aircraft carrier even though it has strong AA is that if they do that, your aircraft carrier will instantly be spotted and the enemy could use that opportunity to target you. So basically, put it over a friendly ship, some other ship is the best option. And also I want to mention that strong AA is so that the enemy planes can be shot down quicker and your planes will lose less health in the process. And also your planes will be able to go back to defending faster. So yeah, basically, controlling fighters well is also a very strong and important part of CV gameplay. At number 4 is not repositioning your CV halfway or at any point of the match. Repositioning basically is moving your ship from its original position to a different position that is more strategic for the battle. Let's say most people think CVs because the aircraft carrier is mostly controlling planes. Most people think it doesn't have to move, including myself when I started. But there are numerous benefits to moving your aircraft carrier to a better position. Let's say in a situation where your team has for some reason all went to the right flank, it's generally safer that you leave spawn and start following behind them at a distance to the right flank, because if you don't, there is a very high chance that an enemy destroyer or cruiser or even a battleship can come around the left flank, and it was undetected before, so it can suddenly pop up and take out your aircraft carrier really quickly. So following at a safe distance is very important. And I say this because the safe distance allows you to not be detected, as following too closely will result in you being detected and being focus fired by the enemy. Another benefit of repositioning is that you are closer to the enemy, which means your planes don't have to fly so far to reach the enemy, and they also don't have to fly that far to come back to your carrier. So this basically reduces the time spent traveling, if we can say like that. Repositioning to a safe spot is also important, but this does not mean running to the edge of the map unless you absolutely have to, as running to the edge of the map, basically, as I said, distance is very important because it will result in you saving or wasting time. If you go to the edge of the map, you will basically have to send your planes really far, so instead of, let's say, they take 20 seconds to arrive at the target, they take 40 seconds, which drastically reduces the efficiency of your aircraft carrier. So yeah, basically, ensure your position is good. And when doing things like epicenter, you can move forward slightly into the first circle or the outermost ring if you really need to help your team get the cap, but be careful not to push too far forward as well, as the enemy will most likely spot you and take you out quickly. So yeah, basically, ensure your position is good, and this will definitely help you a lot with your CV games. At number 5 is trying too hard to torpedo a DD with torpedo bombers, especially if you are playing with the Japanese aircraft carriers. Many players, including myself when we started, had this misconception that we must torpedo the destroyers immediately, because many pro players we have seen, as in the very high level players who play stuff like Shokaku, Taiho and Hakuryu, they have very good control of their torpedo bombers, so they can pretty much delete a destroyer at the start of the match. And doing this is actually good, as in deleting the destroyers, because it will make one less ship that can sneak up on your team and torpedo them, giving your team an advantage. However, this isn't, as I said, not for beginners or if you're not very good at aiming your torpedo planes, because this is quite a difficult maneuver as it really requires speed and precision. So, if you can't hit the DD, what should you do? So you should just help your team by keeping the DD spotted with stuff like fighters and dive bombers. Then you should use your torpedo bombers to strike cruisers, and if you really can't strike cruisers, or the situation shows like the battleship is a better target, you can strike the battleship as well, as the torpedo bombers still deal a lot of damage. Additionally, if you see a ship just got flooded after one run and then your planes are going back, the person damage con the flood instantly, it might be worth sending the next torpedo bomber squadron after that person to make the person start flooding, or even a dive bomber squadron to make them catch fire, as they do not have the damage con and they will certainly take more damage. So yeah guys, keep in mind that if you can't strike DDs, don't be sad, just strike the cruiser or strike the battleship, as your torpedoes can still deal a lot of damage, and that is one of the main sources for, at least from what I know, Japanese aircraft carriers to gain or deal damage. For the sixth and final mistake which many players, including myself, have also made, is to go straight for the enemy CV at the start of the match, ignoring destroyers, cruisers and battleships of the enemy team. This is also known as CV sniping, which can be incredibly annoying if you meet a CV on your team that is constantly doing this. Let me detail why CV sniping is not good. Firstly, destroyers, battleships and cruisers generally, especially destroyers, they are the first and the most prominent threat to your team, so spotting them and taking them out is generally the #1 priority. Sniping the CV, because the CV is very far behind the map, also means your planes have to fly over a lot of enemy anti-aircraft fire, which means they will take a lot of damage, and this will certainly result in you losing a lot of planes. So it's not so good to go snipe the CV. At higher tiers, this is especially important or especially obvious, because most ships at higher tiers, like if you meet stuff like Montana or Izumo, even Yamato, which doesn't have that much AA, but if you fly over 2 or 3 of them, you will still lose a considerable number of planes. So yeah guys, keep in mind, spot the enemy ships, try to take them out with stuff like hitting them directly, setting them on fire or making them flat, and use your fighters to spot as well as defend your friendly ships from enemy planes. This will certainly boost your CV games. So guys, those were 6 common mistakes made by beginners, and I hope you guys can apply it to your games. Next up, what we will be looking at is a replay that I had in my Shokaku. But before we show the replay, I will show you guys the build I use for Shokaku, which should be coming up on screen right now. Feel free to use it for your Shokaku if you find that it suits your playstyle. Anyway, back to the replay. First, let's analyze this matchup results. Basically, this is a tier 8 and 9 battle, which means we are bottom tier, but that is not such a big problem for CVs as long as you don't have very strong ships on the enemy team, ships with very strong AA. So, let's look at the friendly team. Basically, I will first identify the friendly ships with strong AA, so I know where I can bait the fighters to. So basically, you can see on my team, the North Carolina, the Drake, and the Amagi are ships that have decent AA. The North Carolina and Drake being better, but the Amagi is still a good enough choice if I have to bait. So I'll be looking out for them in the battle so I can bait my fighters, or rather bait the enemy fighters using my fighters over to them to use their AA if necessary. I also noticed that there is a Roma on my team, and the Roma is usually targeted by enemy aircraft carriers as Roma has really weak AA. So I'll be sending my fighters to protect the Roma as much as possible if the Roma is under attack. Now let's look at the enemy team. The main concern that I have here when I see a team like that is the Enterprise. Because basically, the 2 CVs that I really don't like facing are Enterprise and Indomitable, as Enterprise, 2 squadrons of fighters can be really strong when coupled together if you are not careful. They can easily shoot down your fighters and easily remove a lot of your planes. Indomitable, on the other hand, has literally invincible fighters. They are so strong and so hard to shoot down that you have to be really careful with them. So yeah guys, watch out if you are fighting Enterprise or Indomitable. Basically, the easy thing about this match is that there isn't really any ships on the enemy team that has very strong AA. The strongest possibly being Izumo or Enterprise, which I am not too afraid of as they are not Friesland, Cleveland or North Carolina, this kind of levels which they can strip your planes. So let's roll the replay. Basically, this is the base capture match on the Atlantic, and as usual CVs will be spawning in the middle. You can see, so I know the battleships. I'm going to be looking at which battleship is on which flank, so I know where I can bait my fighters to. Firstly, I like to send my fighters out because I'm using the fighters to spot and to possibly bait the enemy fighters if they are not careful, so I can easily get an early plane kill. The enemy is sending his fighters, and as you can see, I'm making a mistake here. I send my fighters too close, so even though I press the recall button, the enemy fighters can easily lock on and pull mine into a dogfight, which I will lose because 2 squadrons of Enterprise fighters are still stronger than my single squadron of Shokaku fighters. At this point, I can't defend my team against the the Enterprise planes that are coming in, so all I can do is push my planes in as quickly as possible to attack, as the weakness of Enterprise or generally American battleships, or not battleships, aircraft carriers, is that they have slow planes, so being fast is the trick to counter them. I'm not really sure why the Enterprise has decided to pull his fighters back, but it's a good thing as it has given me some room that I can attack enemies Izumo without losing planes. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is trying to snipe me, so I've decided to send out my second squadron of fighters to help protect against the enemy torpedo and dive bombers. As you can see, I'm now sending my squadron further, the fighter squadron, because what I'm trying to do is bait the enemy fighters. Now you can see the fighters have suddenly turned and started following me, so I press the recall button and set the waypoint over to the left side because I want the fighters to go over the Drake and use the Drake's AA to help shoot down enemy fighters. As you can see, the enemy fighters are almost on the Drake, so I instantly lock it onto the Drake and let them dogfight. I'm now targeting the Izumo because the Izumo is a very big ship and very easy to hit, but suddenly the Amalfi shows up, and knowing the Shokaku's torpedo planes, they can easily strip a lot of health off a cruiser if you score all 8 of the torpedo hits, or even let's say just 6 hits can already strip a lot, so I decide to switch targets to the Amalfi. The dive bombers, being Japanese, are not very good, so I only get 1 bomb hit, and it's very RNG reliant, so you can see it didn't work very well. You can see that I'm playing my recall button to ensure I get the second drop, and by playing around with it, I land all 8 drops, so I cause a flood and I get a decent amount of damage. So now I've got a flood and a fire running on the Amalfi, which certainly is some damage chipping in non-stop. I'm sending my fighters back to where the Roma is because I'm trying to help them keep the DD spotted. The Amagi takes out the Amalfi, and the enemy Enterprise is sending out his squadron again, so I'm attempting to bait as I see them coming in. But suddenly, you can see the enemy's Enterprise is also sending out planes, so I decided to recall, or not recall, but send them over to the North Carolina and the Roma, as I want them to dogfight to shoot down the enemy fighters first, then lock onto the planes and help get rid of them. Now my planes are in the Roma and North Carolina's AA range, so they will eventually shoot down the enemy fighters and eventually start helping take out the enemy dive and torpedo bombers. Now the Izumo is sitting there and it's quite exposed, so I'm sending my next wave of dive bombers after him as he's going to be an easy target. What I'm doing here that I'll realize later game that is a mistake is I am not using my fighters to spot enough, as there is a Kagero, if I don't remember wrongly, it should be a Kagero on the right flank that is concealed, so I should have spotted it earlier to prevent it appearing right beside me. So it's somewhere on the map now, I'm not sure where it is, but the Enterprise fighters are too slow and I managed to drop the Izumo, picking up an easy kill. Meanwhile, my fighters are still flying around, I'm sending them places, but then I noticed that our capture point has started being captured, so I instantly send planes to try to take out the Kagero. I'm not pulling back my fighter squadron because I'm letting it defend the Roma and the North Carolina from the Enterprise planes. One thing you guys can definitely do if you are in a CV and find yourself being pushed by a DD is, again, don't show broadside, as showing broadside will let the DD torpedo you very easily and easily take you out, as the, what is that called, CVs will easily take lots of damage from torpedoes. I'm now sending every squadron of attack planes I have to hit the DD. However, you can see it's very RNG reliant, so I'm not managing to score any hits, so I resort to using my guns. I'm now waiting for my torpedo planes to load up, as torpedoes are what can really hit DDs hard. And you will see later that because I am not very good at controlling torpedo bombers, I decide to send out one squadron to strike the DD instead of both at the same time, as it's much easier to control just one squadron. So guys, keep this in mind. If you can't control two squadrons very well, try to just use one, as it'll make your job a lot easier. One at a time, I mean. So here's the first drop. It's a pretty good drop. I get 3 hits on the Kagero and he loses quite a lot of health. I'm now trying to get my second drop in, playing a recall button and trying to position and lead the Kagero so he runs straight into my torpedoes. I send a squadron of dive bombers after the Kagero as well. And as you can see guys, a properly placed squadron will easily take out a destroyer, which is an easy kill if you are really good at playing CVs. So now basically, the Admiral Hipper gets killed, the match ends and I get a battle star with 76,000 damage. So yeah guys, you can see some of the tips and tricks, or rather, let's not call it tips and tricks because this video is the common mistakes made, but I also can be considered discussing tips and tricks so you guys can see how they can be implemented into your games and play more successfully. So, with 76,000 damage and the battle star, you can see I got 51,000 damage from torpedoes and only 12,000 from bombs, which shows that if you're playing Japanese carriers, the torpedoes are much more important, though American carriers are less reliant on torpedoes and more reliant or more balanced overall. But I would say try to use your torpedoes, or at least prioritize making them land more often, as bombs are RNG, which means they can miss and not in your control, but torpedoes are not RNG, as you can guarantee them a hit. So guys, remember, control your planes well and you will really start to enjoy playing CVs. So guys, that basically brings us to the end of this video, and these are just some of the tips and tricks, or rather the common mistakes players, which including myself, have made when playing CVs, and this video was made with the intent so you guys can avoid them and be able to play better quickly. Of course, some of the things I mentioned will take time to learn, such as using the recall button correctly, controlling your fighters, and dropping the destroyer with torpedoes, but with time and practice, you will eventually get better and get higher damage with CVs. I would also have liked to include even more things in this video, but that will make the video too long, so if you guys want more, or rather a part 2, don't forget to tell me down in the comment section down below. I have also got a Discord server, which I have linked at the bottom of the video, so you guys can join and we can chat if you want to. But that's all for now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. My name is HL, and I'll see you next time.